Oh my gosh. Oh my, oh my. Can you believe what we heard today from Joe Biden at his presser today? First press conference finally coming out of the box. A lot of discussion about immigration. We're going to drill down on the specifics. I'm Dan Stein, president of FAIR, Federation for American Immigration Reform. Hey, you're going to get the real scoop here. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. We know exactly why what's going on that border is going on. This is not rocket science, but we can tell you exactly what was true and what wasn't true today. So let's review what was discussed at this conference and stop and talk about what he said and what, in fact, the reality is.
You've said over and over again that immigrants shouldn't come to this country right now. This isn't the time to come. That message is not being received.
All right. First of all, very briefly, this business about now is not the time to come. The implication is later will be the time to come. So first off, we have conflicting messages simply saying we're going to figure out a way to get you in, but you got to wait. So their deterrence is based on the idea that you need to wait in line until your turn comes. You get to go to the deli, pick a number, we'll call you. It's like a vaccination. Don't worry, eventually, wink, nod, nod. So please stay there because, we'll figure out a way. That is conflicting messaging, and it's totally bogus and doesn't serve the national interest at all.
The perception of you that got you elected as a moral, decent man is the reason why a lot of immigrants are coming to this country and entrusting you with unaccompanied minors. How do you resolve that tension? And how are you choosing which families can stay and which can go? And is there a timeline for when we won't be seeing these overcrowded facilities?
So the question here is, how are you deciding who to send back? And they think you're a really nice guy. So why should you send anybody back? I mean, this is obviously a plant question. I assume they're all pre-selected questions. I mean, you can kind of tell. But then she's saying, what are you going to do about the overcrowding? And you'll see pretty soon that what Biden is trying to do once again with this sleight of hand is explain that he's trying to accommodate a flow, not deter it.
Well, look, I guess I should be flattered. People are coming because I'm the nice guy. That's the reason why it's happening.
Maybe it has something to do with the fact that over and over and over again in the political campaign, not nationally so much, but to selected audiences, you said,
we immediately surged to the border. All those people are seeking asylum.
Come on in, surge to the border. Everybody should have their shot at an asylum claim. They shouldn't be locked up. They shouldn't be detained. You said that the country could take millions more people in, maybe because you very specifically said over and over again that you wanted to let people come in, that you were sending these very dangerous signals all the way through. In fact, the apprehensions along the border begin to drift up right about the time you started campaigning. Not long after Super Tuesday, not long after you became the probable nominee for the Democratic nomination. Messages go around the world very quickly, and smuggling operations make it abundantly clear when there's going to be a policy change.
That I'm a decent man, or however it's phrased, that, that's why they're coming, because Biden's a good guy. Truth of the matter is, nothing has changed.
Okay, nothing has changed. Joe Biden took a wrecking ball to everything that President Trump and the administration had put in place. Remain in Mexico, Northern Triangle cooperation agreements, the cooperation agreements with the Mexican government. He scrapped all of that. He scrapped the asylum reform regulations. He stopped all deportations internally. He rolled up all the state and local federal cooperation agreements. He signaled around the world there'll be no employer sanctions or any interior enforcement or any enforcement over visa overstays. Nobody's going to be removed from the country unless you're a terrorist or something very serious. So basically send out the word that now's the time to come. Everything changed. Everything changed. How can you take a wrecking ball, 15, 20 executive orders undoing everything the Trump administration did, and then have the audacity to say that nothing changed? Everything changed.
As many people came, 28% increase in children to the border in my administration, 31% in the last year in 2019 before the pandemic.
First of all, comparing this year to 2019 is completely misleading. 2019 was a very bad year, heretofore about the worst year. Trump administration struggled. They did not return unaccompanied minors, but they struggled to try to find deterrence in other capacities with the zero tolerance policy. They tried to actually enforce the criminal components of crossing without entry. Of course, they built the wall. These are these other things. Biden stopped building the wall. You know, it's absolutely absurd to compare 2019 and 2020. You look at the chart and you see that in general, what is going on is unprecedented, without precedent, based certainly on the trajectory of where we're going as a country. So this argument that this is seasonal and to be expected, I mean, yeah, there's some seasonal flow traditionally, but not at this level and not this magnitude. And anybody can see with their own lion eyes that these are people who are being manipulated by smuggling operations coming across the border, that the policy of how they're handling unaccompanied minors and others is a byproduct of Biden's own policies. When he was a senator, he pushed through this law in 2007-8 to treat unaccompanied minors differently. He has supported the limited detention policies and the release of unaccompanied minors into the country. He knows full well that he's endorsed a process that's being exploited now more than ever in this administration. His decision to release families, 70% or so. Essentially, we're being misled, and he's telling us things that aren't true about what's going on at the border. But he has dramatically changed the situation from where the Trump administration was, and he is has direct responsibility. And we understand that politically, Biden does not want to take responsibility for the mess he created. We all get that. But the fact is, he does have responsibility. He created this mess knowingly. He, Kamala Harris, have full political responsibility for the mess they've created along the border. Nothing he says is going to get him out of that.
Which happens every single solitary year.
That is a lie. That is a full-on, fat-out fabrication lie. This is normal. This happens every single year. That's baloney.
There is a significant increase in the number of people coming to the border in the winter months of January, February, March. It happens every year.
This is the typical left-wing attack. There's nothing you can do about it. It's cyclical. It happens anyway. May as well just sit back and enjoy it. That's a lie.
Does anybody suggest that there was a 31% increase under Trump because he was a nice guy and he was doing good things at the border?
What kind of a false dilemma is this? My recollection was the Democrats opposed everything Trump tried to do legislatively during the Congresses when Trump did not control the both chambers. The Democrats have opposed, Joe Biden has opposed employer sanctions, interior enforcement, state and local cooperation, robust accelerated removal proceedings, summary repatriation, credible fear threshold determinations in order to control asylum fraud. I mean, he's going back and restored the old catch and release system. People who, if he wants to get across the border, and of course, probably 70% of the people who are the ones that get away, I mean, they only catch maybe 30% of the people crossing illegally. He's responsible for the complete collapse of interior immigration law enforcement in the United States. How can he stand up there with a straight face and say these lies, this absolute fabricated baloney? It is shocking to the conscience to see this kind of disingenuous lying going on out of the White House.
The reason they're coming is that it's the time they can travel with the least likelihood of dying on the way because of the heat in the desert, number one. Number two, they're coming because of the circumstances in country. In country.
Okay, now the argument here is that nothing this administration does, nothing the United States does in immigration policy has an effect on how many people are coming into the country or trying to come into the country. Stop to try to consider how ludicrous that proposition is. There have been poor conditions in those countries forever. There's been gang violence. There's been hurricanes. There's weather-related events all the time. Systemic poverty, systemic corruption. It goes on and on and on. There's nothing really new in that regard. They've had a pandemic. We've had a pandemic. All the evidence shows, go back to Jimmy Carter. Before that, I mean, there's an enormous sensitivity of migration flows to policy changes we made. Joe Biden will not take responsibility for the fact that his policy changes have uncorked this massive crisis. And he has no apparent plan to change the policy to stop this from growing. I mean, that's the most alarming part of all of it.
The way to deal with this problem, and I started to deal with it back when I was United States Vice President, putting together a bipartisan plan of over $700 million to do with the root causes of why people are leaving.
This idea that we're going to keep our borders wide open and have a chaotic system until we can fix all the problems in Central America, Mexico, South America, and all over the world is like fantasy. The Democrats have painted themselves into an untenable policy corner. They've overtly tried to destroy all immigration enforcement. Joe Biden, they've opposed an E-Verify, interior enforcement, state and local cooperation, rapid expedited removals. They've done everything possible to add the procedural process so it takes years and years to get someone out of the country. You release them pending a hearing, they don't show up, you can never find them, you do order them removed. Notice to appear, they don't show up, you order them deported in absentia, they never leave the country until the Democrats push the next amnesty bill. There's a cycle here. And to make the argument that they're eventually going to be removed because they won't qualify, so therefore you should release them or join them with their relatives in this country. At the same time, you're pushing a mass amnesty bill in the Congress. I mean, how stupid can you be? What kind of public policy moron are you that you believe that you are going to deter any illegal flow with this kind of behavior? I mean, this strange credulity, what do they think we are? I mean, I've said previously, they must think we are dumb as bricks to listen to this nonsense. And how these reporters, these sheep that they pick in the Washington press corps, all of a sudden they've all gone and they're bleeding around and chewing on cud, nothing to see here. It's the first news conference this guy's given since he came into office, and this is they think you're a really swell guy, Mr. President. I mean, they let him get away with this nonsense.
What did Trump do? He eliminated that funding. He didn't use it. He didn't do it.
Somehow we're supposed to believe that $700 million, which, by the way, Trump used as leverage to get cooperation from these governments and actually demonstrated you could get this stuff done. What Donald Trump did was demonstrate that with the proper leverage, tools, and policies, you could control the borders. Biden has dismantled all that, has lost control of the borders, and is now blaming Trump. I mean, what the hell?
And in addition to that, what he did, he dismantled all the elements that exist to deal with what had been a problem and has been continued to be a problem for a long time.
No, you dismantled all of the things that were working. You dismantled things that were proven effective. You opposed, you criticized, you denounced, and then you undid them. And now, of course, they're pouring across the border again. We have half a border wall built here and there. We have Border Patrol busy trying to take care of kids so they're not stopping the smugglers, bringing people in through other places on the border. You are facilitating organized crime. You are facilitating smuggling. You are either the unwitting dupe or the intentional accomplice for human trafficking and drug smuggling by what you're doing. I mean, who are you kidding? How can you possibly stand up there and make these outrageous statements? I mean, this is the most offensive thing I've seen probably ever.
He, in fact, shut down the number of beds available. He did not fund HHS to get the children out of those Border Patrol facilities where they should not be and not supposed to be more than a few days, a little while. But he dismantled all of that.
Trump and the administration set a clear signal that illegal immigration was not going to be tolerated or rewarded, that it was not going to be a way by which you get into the country, delay the process. He tried to roll up temporary protected status to restore its original meaning. He tried to enforce the law the way it was written. And now Biden is sending out these people who have no credibility whatsoever. Alejandro Mayorkas has established a track record of ignoring the law and creating new categories of immigration. Out of whole cloth. He's appointed Kamala Harris to go down there. Kamala Harris is like putting an anti-vaxxer in charge of the vaccine program. These are people who've opposed ICE who want to roll up ICE, call it the KKK. These are people who have affirmatively said they don't agree with all immigration enforcement, who have been part and parcel of the process to reward illegal immigration, to create the very crisis we're dealing with. How do you send out somebody who's created a crisis willfully and knowingly to fix the crisis? And now apparently we're supposed to do multilateral cooperation with Central American governments to fix their... when is that going to happen? I mean, maybe sometime in the next 50 years, but what is he doing in the meantime?
So what we're doing now is attempting to rebuild the system that can accommodate what is happening today.
Okay, there's the key word, accommodate. Rebuild a system to accommodate. What they want to do is extraction migration. They want to pull them out of these countries, fly them in at the dead of night. Nobody knows what's going on. And they want to do this, it's as plain as the nose on your face. They want to accommodate the flow. They want to do it in a way that's out of sight of public view. They want communities to be not consulted, so they're not aware of what's going on, impacting their schools, hospitals, housing, or anything else, and foist it on the taxpayers, and then turn around and complain about equity and the fact that these English language learners aren't keeping up, and the whole thing cascades into more money for the teachers' unions, and it just goes on and on and on. But he has no intention of stopping it. He has no intention of stopping it. He wants to accommodate a process of allowing people to come illegally and then use the Central American or whatever minors program it is, whatever countries it happens to be, to join their parents to live in this country illegally and then try to push another amnesty.
If you take a look at the number of people who are coming, the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of people coming to the border and crossing are being sent back.
Okay, once again, we have lying. We have lying, outrageous lying. He's implying somehow the border is somehow sealed. This is what Marcus tried to do last weekend. Obviously, most of the families they're apprehending are not being sent back. If you cross the border with a smuggling operation and you get into the country, you're obviously not being sent back. So who's being sent back? Single males and a small number of the families that are coming. Unaccompanied minors are all being admitted, and they tell this to the whole world. So what is he trying to say? Is he actually trying to say that how can they be sending people back when the Border Patrol is so busy processing children that they don't have anyone on the line? And what is he trying to accomplish with this lie?
Tens of thousands of people who are over 18 years of age and single people, one at a time coming, have been sent back.
We could see anywhere from 400,000 to 1 million illegal aliens coming into the U.S. this year. He's talking about tens of thousands of people apprehended. The Border Patrol will tell you they're only apprehending a few. And then what about visa overstays with this enforcement posture? People who fly in once the pandemic travel is listed. And they don't leave. There's no enforcement. I mean, who is he kidding here? He's like explaining something. To what end? How can you possibly sell the idea that immigration is under control? I challenge you to find a single professional working in the field of immigration management and control who actually believes that they're effectively regulating immigration.
We're trying to work out now with Mexico their willingness to take more of those families back, but that's what's happening. They're not getting across the border. And those who are coming across the border who are unaccompanied children, we're moving rapidly to try to put in place what was dismantled.
Why is he trying to negotiate with these countries when he had agreements with these countries and then took a sledgehammer to them? How can you turn around and criticize what the Trump administration did and then turn around and try to do the same thing? Unless you have a totally different agenda.
For example, of all the children who are coming across the border, over 70% are either 16 or 17 years old.
The Central American Minors Program, when it existed, did not admit very many people from those countries, several thousand. Obviously, a Central American minor program is not a substitute for what people are trying to do now, which is take advantage of a program that Biden himself was an architect of, the treatment of unaccompanied minors. The way the law was passed, 2007 and 8, it specifically accelerates the process of allowing unaccompanied minors to gimmick the system. He knows that. He created it. He wants to expand it. It's part of the reason why we have this ongoing crisis with unaccompanied minors. Why people are intentionally separating themselves from their children to take advantage of this loophole.
We're not talking about people ripping babies from mothers' arms or little 3-year-olds standing on the border. Less than, I think it's 1.5% fall in the category of the very young.
Very interesting. I don't remember that we got this kind of understanding deference when the Trump administration was trying to do the zero tolerance policy. All of a sudden he's saying, oh, there really aren't any small kids. They're all, teenagers, and they're probably actually, what are they, drug runners? Are they going to work with the smugglers? I mean, who are these people? I mean, how does he know all these things, and what is he trying to defend himself from?
So what we're doing is we're providing for the space, again, to be able to get these kids out of the Border Patrol facilities, which no child, no one should be in any longer than 72 hours. And today, I went to, for example, I used all the resources available to me, went to the Defense Department, and the Secretary of Defense has just made available Fort Bliss, 5,000 beds.
Why do we want to be using our military facilities to be housing immigrant children who are breaking the law, basically, by coming here? Why wouldn't you want to fly them back to their home country as soon as possible? Why is it our responsibility to take care of these kids? They're taking advantage of a loophole. Once you get them into the country, how do you ever get them back out of the country? They get advocates, they push to stay. Anybody can understand, why people want to improve their lives and the lives of their children. But that doesn't mean we have to accommodate a never-ending flow of this. So all he seems to be doing is acquiring more and more facilities to house more and more children.
5,000 beds in the Texas border. So we're building back up the capacity that should have been maintained and built upon, that Trump dismantled.
So he's saying that we should have had in reserve military facilities for an ongoing border crisis during the Trump administration. The Trump administration stopped the border crisis, shut it down. Obviously, the unaccompanied minor issue was the law. They had to deal with that, but they did a great job deterring it. And they got great cooperation from other countries. They required people to make their asylum claim in the first country they came to. That was safe, and frankly, there are spots within these countries that are safer than parts of our country. So, they applied a rule of reason in the Trump administration, and instead, this is going back into this idea. Well, the only place they can go is the U.S., and there seems to be an admission without limit of unaccompanied minors.
And the other thing we're doing, I might add, am I giving you too long an answer? Because
I say now he's run out of gas because he's like, I'm taking time. I don't really know what I'm building. I'm building a never-ending structure for more and more and more and more people to be processed into the country. And maybe I don't want to go there, so now I'm going to go, am I talking too much? Because I really don't know where else to go, because in the end, I don't want to tell you what my end game is. I don't want to reach the logical conclusion of my dialogue, which is to tell you that we will have basically a doormat and people will just run into the country, which is what he's basically doing.
If you don't want the detail. No, but I don't know how much detail you want about immigration.
He's killing time here.
One, if you could talk a little bit about which families, why they're being allowed to stay, what the families that are being allowed to stay, why they're being allowed to stay.
Because Mexico is refusing to take them back. They're saying they won't take them back, not all of them. We're in negotiations with the president of Mexico. I think we're going to see that change.
Well, you had an agreement with Mexico, but you rolled it up. You took a sledgehammer to it. Why are you complaining now they won't take them back? Obviously, the Mexican government thinks you're a soft touch. They call you the migrant president. All these people who are coming up to the border are saying they're coming up because of Biden. And Biden said, they're not coming up because of me. Even the Mexican government. And they realize that you're a soft touch, that you're politically trapped, that you essentially invited them to come up here. So why should they take them back? What kind of an idiot are you? How can you be in public service for 40 years and not realize that you were going to create this mess? This is the most pathetic performance I've seen in the White House in my entire life.
They should all be going back. All be going back.
That's a lie. They're not all going to be going back because there's no interior immigration enforcement. You're not removing anybody. Instead, you're pushing a mass amnesty bill through Congress. January 1, 2021. January 1, 2021, of all the idiocy, right? Even in 1986, it was like 1/182, 4 years back, to prevent a massive flood at the border. So, he's like, we're going to do 1/1/21. Like, wow, what a big shocker that would set off a tidal wave. of illegal immigration, and this is just the beginning. I mean, okay, who's going to send these people back? His administration opposes sending them back.
The only people we're not going to let sitting there on the other side of the Rio Grande by themselves with no help are children.
I mean, once again, they're playing the minor card. This has been going on since the DREAM Act in 2002. They decided they would carve out children as an easily relatable population to get sympathy, treat them differently through no fault of their own. Naturally, people respond to the messages you send. People respond to the signals we send. If you're going to provide exceptions for minors and treat them differently, obviously you're going to get minors coming into the country. Not a big surprise. A lot of people want to live here.
The vast majority of people under the age of 18 come to the United States come with a telephone number on a wristband, or come with a telephone number in their pocket in the United States. A mother, a father, a close relative, a grandmama or grandpa. What was happening before is it's taking literally weeks and weeks and maybe even months before anybody pick up the phone and call to see if there really was someone there.
Right. Well, if you disaggregate this problem, what you realize is that these are people who are in the country, in many cases, illegally, or they're here under temporary protected status and should have had that status revoked a long time ago and been told to go back home to their home country. But instead, the policies here are keeping them here, and naturally they want their dependent minors, members of the family, to come and join them. So now Biden apparently feels, again, that it's part of his responsibility to reunify the whole family in the United States and therefore facilitate the process of smuggling alien minors into the country, which is obviously very lucrative for trafficking operations and the cartels.
Well, we've set up a system now where within 24 hours there's a phone call made as that child crosses the border. And then a verification system being put in place as of today to determine quickly whether or not that is a trafficker being called or that is actually a mom, a dad, and or a close relative.
Well, first of all, in many cases, they're almost the same thing. I mean, the point is if the family is already in hock to the trafficker to pay off the cost of getting the alien into the country, someone's got to pay. So, I mean, why you want to facilitate a process of smuggling instead of enforcing the immigration law with respect to the entire family? Why do you want to roll up the agreement Trump had that said sponsors who come and claim their minor children who are here illegally are going to be put in removal proceedings? Why would Americans want to promote a system of alien smuggling at taxpayer expense? Why would they want the government to facilitate the process?
There's two ways to reduce child populations in circumstances that are not acceptable, like being held at a Border Patrol station. One is to get them to the place where they have a relative and set a date as to when a hearing can be held. The second way to do it is put them in a Health and Human Services facility that we're occupying now, both licensed beds around the country that exist, as well as, for example, federal resources like Fort Bliss, to get them safely in a place where they can be taken care of while their fate is determined.
Again, why do we want to be handling alien minors at this level? And why do we want to be paying for education, housing, medical care for potentially years at a time under these conditions? There simply has to be a better way to deter this flow.
Just got back last night from a reporting trip to the border where I met 9-year-old Josel, who walked here from Honduras by himself along with another little boy. He had that phone number on him. His mother says that she sent her son to this country because she believes that you are not deporting unaccompanied minors like her son. That's why she sent him alone from Honduras. So, sir, you blame the last administration, but is your messaging in saying that these children are and will be allowed to stay in this country and work their way through this process, encouraging families like Josel's to come?
There you have it. So reporters on the ground are talking to the people who are coming, and they're flat out telling you, oh yeah, Biden, he's the one, he promised we're going to come in. I don't see any way that Biden can possibly deny what he's done. How can people not take accountability? This is one of those rare examples where you can ascribe political blame right where it belongs.
Well, look,
See, Biden obviously doesn't know what to say.
the idea that I'm going to say, which I would never do, that if an unaccompanied child ends up at the border, we're just going to let them starve to death and stay on the other side.
This is a lie. Who has let unaccompanied minor children, a 3-year-old, sit there and starve on the other side of the border? Trump administration didn't do that. Trump administration didn't return a 3-year-old to no man's land across the border. I mean, again, this is completely unresponsive to what the questioner is saying.
No previous administration did that either, except Trump.
It's a lie. Trump didn't do that.
I'm not going to do it. That's why I've asked the Vice President of the United States yesterday to be the lead person on dealing with focusing on the fundamental reasons why people leave Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador in the first place.
Again, this is like putting an anti-vaxxer in charge of the national vaccination program. Kamala Harris is not the person to send to fix this problem. Now, sending her down there to try to fix their problems are their responsibility to fix, not our responsibility to fix. But more importantly, what expertise does she have in nation building or figuring out how to deter flows of migration? She has no idea. She's from a state where she undermined immigration law enforcement and set up the very incentives that draw people here. Now, suppose she goes back down there and she finds out, oh, the reason they're all coming up here is because of policies her administration and she herself have supported. Rolling up ICE, abolishing ICE, restraining ICE, stopping interior enforcement, no E-Verify, no worksite enforcement, no expedited, nothing. Right? No real state and local force multipliers, 287G agreements, all the things, sanctuary cities. What happens if she finds out her promise for free health care, everything else is a big magnet, the main magnet drawing people here as opposed to going somewhere else? What is she going to do? I mean, is she going to turn around and say, oh my gosh, I was wrong. We really need to do something about these incentives and actually restore deterrence? Or is he just biding time? I mean, what's the plan?
It's because of earthquakes, floods. It's because of lack of food. It's because of gang violence. It's because of a whole range of things.
None of which apparently have anything to do with policies that the Democratic and some cheap labor Republicans have pushed for the last 40 years. I mean, every day we go up there to Capitol Hill and we say, look, these are the things you need to do. E-Verify, document security, document reform. I mean, these things would help with vote fraud, too, for example. Detention space, interior enforcement, expedited procedures, expedited removal, rationalizing immigration procedures, not turning every immigration case into the equivalent of a murder trial with its procedural process, limiting motions to reopen, requiring aliens to timely file asylum claims. Okay, summary removal of aliens who don't have credible asylum claims, requiring people to make refugee claims outside the country if they are refugees, not allowing our asylum system to be gimmicked and abused. It goes on and on and on. Why wouldn't you want to focus on some of those things?
That when I was vice president, had the same obligation to deal with unaccompanied children, I was able to get it slowed up significantly by working with the heads of state of those communities to do things like in one of the major cities, the reason people were leaving is they couldn't walk the street because their kids were getting beat up or shot or gang violence. Well, what I was able to do is not give money to the head of state because so many are corrupt, but I was able to say, okay, you need lighting in the streets to change things? I'll put the lighting in. We got a contractor. We got the type of lighting.
So what happened with the lighting? Did the lights go out in 4 years? I mean, apparently whatever they did, it didn't last very long.
We paid directly to the contractor, did not go through the government.
This is complete nonsense. Okay, he's talking about direct action where they're going to pay for lighting systems or water systems. Like we're on the hook, we taxpayers are on the hook. This country has almost $30 trillion in debt. And we're going to start turning around. I mean, let the Chinese build the infrastructure down there if that's what they really want. Chinese have all the cash.
And violent crime significantly was reduced in that city. Fewer people sought to leave. When this hurricane occurred, the 2 hurricanes, instead of us going down and helping in a major way so that people would not have a reason to want to leave in the first place because they didn't have housing or water.
This is painful. This is painful to listen to. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Millions of Americans have lost their job. Millions of Americans have seen their finances set back. Our competition with respect to countries like China has also been set back, and we will soon no longer be the world's largest economy. This country is truly in deep financial trouble, disguised only by the reality of a reserve currency, which may not last much longer. We have to be realistic about the limitations of our resources. And the idea that we have to subordinate our immigration controls to trying to fix the problems all over the world. Surely there are people who want to come here from countries besides these particular countries in Central America or Mexico. We all know that. I mean, this is deluded thinking. This is simply not in the real world, consistent with how people behave. The reason people are coming is because they believe they can.
We're going to do a lot in our administration. We're going to be spending that $700+ million a year to change the life and circumstances of why people leave in the first place. That mother did not sit around on the kitchen table and say, you know, I got a great idea. Well, I'm going to make sure my son gets taken care of.
Biden seems to know only how to do two things: spend other people's money and lecture us on how he's going to save the world with other people's money. By the way, he doesn't have anybody else's money. All the money he's using is borrowed money at this point, relying on low interest rates. I mean, he seems to think that he's John Kennedy and it's 1961, that the United States is running massive surpluses and that we're the manufacturing, might of the world. The United States is in very dire economic straits. Our own infrastructure is crumbling.
The Customs and Border Protection Facility in Donna, Texas, I was there, is at 1,556% capacity right now with mostly unaccompanied minors. There are kids that are sleeping on floors. They are packed into these pods. I've spoken to lawyers who say that some of these children have not seen the sun in days. What is your reaction to these images that have come out from that particular facility? Is what's happening inside acceptable to you? And when is this going to be fixed?
That's a serious question, right? Is it acceptable to me? Come on. That's why we're going to be moving 1,000 of those kids out quickly. That's why I got Fort Bliss opened up. That's why I've been working from the moment this started to happen to try to find additional access for children to be able to safely, not just children, but particularly children, to be able to safely be housed while we follow through on the rest of what's happening.
See, again, it's all about accommodation, acceleration, doing it out of public view, accelerating a process. There must be transparency. There must be accountability. The administration needs to comply with the law. They can't just make up immigration law or pretend that everybody's, subject to humanitarian parole without limit. They need to be able to tell us what this is going to cost, how many people are going to come in, where are they going to go. You don't have a country if you don't have case-by-case consideration and you don't do it within the framework of the immigration laws passed by Congress. Who does he think he is?
How soon will journalists be able to have access to the facilities? But we haven't seen the facilities in which children are packed together to really give the American people a chance to see that. Will you commit to transparency on this issue?
I will commit to transparency. And as soon as I am in a position to be able to implement what we're doing right now, and you'll have full access to everything once we get this thing moving.
Okay, and just to be clear, how soon will that be, Mr. President?
I don't know.
All right, so when he says get this thing moving, what does this thing moving mean? This thing moving seems to be a massive conveyor belt of people into the country as quickly as possible, efficiently bringing people in and doing something with them, maybe reuniting them with people here illegally. Maybe he's got some kind of plan for a mass orphanage. I mean, what is the end game? What are the numbers we're talking about? Where are they going? Where's the deterrent value? What about the fact that there are unaccompanied minors potentially coming from all over the world to take advantage of this policy? I mean, where does this end?
You bear responsibility for everything that's happening at the border now. I hear you talking a lot about the past administration. You decided to roll back some of those policies. Did you move too quickly to
roll back what? I'm sorry?
Policies. Did you move too quickly to roll back some of the executive orders of your predecessor?
First of all the policies that are underway were not helping at all. Did not slow up the amount of immigration.
All right. You can't find a single credible professional who would say that that is true. The idea that none of the things the Trump administration did, none of the signals that they sent, none of the policy changes that they changed on asylum reform, detention, remain in Mexico, interior multilateral agreements with Northern Triangle countries, interior enforcement, none of those things had an impact. I mean, this is truly deluded thinking. This is without any shred of credibility. And first of all, if they were making no difference, then why was he so determined to get rid of them? What was so wrong with them that he wanted to get rid of them if they were having no impact? I mean, come on, man.
Rolling back the policies of separating children from their mothers, I make no apology for that. Rolling back the policies of remain in Mexico, sitting on the edge of the Rio Grande in a muddy circumstance with not enough to eat, I make no apologies for that. I make no apologies for ending programs that did not exist before Trump became president.
So basically what he's saying is that anything Trump did, he opposed. I mean, Trump did a lot more than what he's talking about. Remain in Mexico was a successful program. It deterred fraudulent asylum applications. That was the point of it. Also, don't forget that Biden is going back and re-expanded the definition of asylum to include things that the lawmakers never intended asylum to cover, like generalized gang violence or generalized criminal behavior within a country or generalized poverty or what have you. I mean, this is absolutely insane. This is insanity coming from the White House. What we have right now is a president of such dubious competence, of such a lack of moral integrity, such a lack of truthfulness. This clearly is without a doubt the biggest tissue of lies coming out of a president in the immigration policy realm that in the history of the country. The disingenuousness is beyond stagnatingly unbelievable. I mean, he has no plans. As you can see, Biden administration has no plan. They are in a crisis and they have no idea how to get out of it except to continue building facilities to house people, apparently to an unlimited degree. And this is a catastrophe.
That have an incredibly negative impact on the law, international law, as well as on human dignity.
This country has the right to control its borders. It has the right to decide who can come into this country and who doesn't. We're not violating international law by insisting that people make an asylum claim with the first safe country they come to. We're not violating immigration law by not allowing our asylum procedure to be gimmicked into oblivion, allowing people to disappear in our country and forcing taxpayers to spend billions of dollars finding people or continuing to pass mass amnesty bills when the government won't do it. We have a crisis of credibility in this country, a crisis of confidence. Our government is failing us. It is failing us in its most important fundamental function of controlling and regulating our borders and protecting our national security and our community safety, of ensuring our ability to control our destiny. This country is facing a catastrophe because our government is failing in carrying out its most essential functions. No country can be successful if it doesn't effectively control its perimeters. And we have an administration right now, even worse than Obama, and it was hard to believe, but an administration right now that is taking this country into unknown waters of policy catastrophe.
Well, no, treating the root causes in Latin America doesn't change things overnight. How do you realistically and physically keep these families from coming to the U.S. when things will not get better in their countries right away?
Well, I can't guarantee that, but I know, that old thing, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. You know as well as I do. You cover it. You have it's not like somebody sitting on a hand-hewn table in Guatemala, in somewhere in Mexico or in Guadalupe saying, I got a great idea. Let's sell everything we have. Give it to a coyote. Have them take our kids across the border into a desert where they don't speak the language. Won't that be fun? Let's go. That's not how it happens. People don't want to leave.
This is a continued masterful deflection of the core issues. Biden, for whatever reason, believes that he can just get on a soapbox and bloviate about non sequiturs. Everybody knows that everybody in this world would rather be able to stay home and not have to migrate. People who migrate do so for many, many reasons. Frequently they migrate because they have a relative who's told them it's going to be better and therefore they should go. They have many relatives who've been there before, and they tell them what the situation is, where they might be able to get a job, where they might be able to live. People are not stupid. They know. Make the decision based on networking and network cooperation and those kinds of things. So this is a massive deflection of what he's missing the main point. He's basically saying he has no plan.
So I can't guarantee we're going to solve everything.
All right, he's not guaranteeing he's going to solve anything. Biden's not guaranteeing he has any solutions to anything. He says he's got a first step, some pie-in-the-sky exhortation about making things better. And meantime, we're on the hook for an unlimited number of people coming into the country in different conditions while the Border Patrol continues to deteriorate and he pushes a mass amnesty through Congress. This is an example of some of the most failed leadership we've ever seen in the history of the country. This is a catastrophic situation. This is truly without precedent. Where does this go?
Have you had any talks with Senate Republicans who are threatening this administration with not considering the immigration legislation that was passed in the House until the situation at the border has been resolved?
No, because I know they have to posture for a while. They sort of got to get out of their system. This is but I'm ready to work with any Republican who wants to help solve the problem or make the situation better. But folks, I'm going. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So this is nonsense. I mean, the point is his policies have created the crisis. His policies mean no politician, theoretically, at least anybody with a moderate to centrist constituency, can possibly push or pass a big amnesty bill in this context. It is his policies that have undermined the ability to create any bipartisan cooperation. These are his choices that he makes, not to work on a bipartisan basis. These are his choices that he doesn't want to pursue any real solutions that might actually control our borders or discourage illegal immigration. He doesn't have answers. He exhorts, he deflects, and the situation will deteriorate. And as a result, his presidency is not going to be successful. It can't be successful if you don't face problems realistically and with honest and durable solutions. Nobody is going to listen to this news conference, I assume, and think that this guy has any clue how to fix the problem. Apparently, he doesn't want to fix the problem. He wants to posture like he's concerned about the problem and, quote, make things better. Trying to make things better, spending a lot of money that doesn't have to try to make things better on somebody else's infrastructure rather than the United States' infrastructure, apparently believing that there's an unlimited amount of money that they can print because of our reserve currency, and therefore we're going to start printing it on behalf of other countries that threaten to come to us, or maybe for the North Koreans, or who knows what he's got in mind. Where is this all going, okay? For Americans who are concerned about immigration control, this is a true crisis. This has to be stopped in its tracks. There has to be an effort made in Congress. There has to be an effort made in the courts to put an end to this process. You can't just continue to bring in people and then place them with relatives on a different basis because everybody's related to everybody else. They have no answers. They have no solutions. He created a crisis he has no idea to fix. That's the big takeaway today. He has no idea how to fix it. He brought it on intentionally, and he opposes the very policies that would actually stop it. We'll have more on that later. Thanks for listening.